Good evening, everyone. We will call this Committee of Adjustment meeting to order. Just before we get started this evening, I know the applicant and others are sitting in a waiting room. I'm just going to go through the meeting's protocols for tonight. The first thing, we only have one application that we'll be hearing this evening. And that the first order of business will ask for any conflicts of interest of any committee members that have with the application that's on the agenda for this evening. Following that, I will ask for any requests or deferrals of applications that are on the agenda. The first thing I will do as the applicant comes in, I will confirm that they wish to proceed. The first order of business then would be for the Secretary Treasurer to read out the application on the agenda with a brief description and a staff recommendation, as well as a summation of any additional correspondence that's been received from the time of their report. The applicant or the agent for the applicant will then be brought in, introduce themselves, and provide any additional information that they wish to at that time. Then the committee will have a chance to ask the applicant any questions that they might have, followed by members of the public. And I believe we have two registered delegations that have wished to speak to the one application that we have tonight. Following that, the committee will again have any opportunity to ask any questions that they have. The applicant will then have a chance to add any additional closing comments that they wish to make. Once that has been heard, the committee members will make a decision in the form of a motion. The motion will be discussed and voted upon. If a motion is tied, the motion will be defeated and a new motion will be made until such time as we have a decision. Should be noted that notices of decision will only be provided to those persons who have left their name and addresses with the Secretary Treasurer and the Planning Division. To get added to that list, they can contact Chris Rome at chris.rome, R-O-O-M-E, at portcolborne.ca following this meeting, or they can leave a voicemail at 905-835-2900, extension 205, either immediately following the meeting or first thing in the morning. If you'd like to receive a notice of decision. In order to be advised of any possible local planning appeal tribunal hearings, you must request to be sent a copy of the committee's decision. So that's the protocols for tonight. So the first thing I will do is ask if there's any conflicts of interest. And I believe, Eric, you had indicated as such.
That's correct. I'd like to declare an indirect pecuniary interest on application A30-21-PC, as has been made aware to me that my employer, Upper Canada Consultants, has been involved in not necessarily this application, but another application involving the property.
Very good, thank you. So once we start that, I believe they'll move you out into the lobby area. I believe you can still listen, but we won't see you and we won't hear you either. And then once the application has been decided upon, we can bring you back in to finish up our other business. So with that, no one else has any other conflicts? Not seeing any. So with that, Mr. Secretary, the first application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first application tonight, our only application tonight, is application A30-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13 as amended, Section 2.18A, 3.1.1, 3.6A, 3.11.1A, and 8.7G and H of the City of Port Colborne Zoning Bylaw 6575/3018 as amended. And in the matter of the lands legally known as part of Park Lot 6 on plans 987, 988, and 989 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, located in the 4th Density Residential Zone in on the west side of Catherine Street. In the matter of an application by the agent Jacob Dickey on behalf of the owner, the Landscape Depot, for relief from the provisions of Zoning Bylaw 6575/3018 as amended under Section 45 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13, so as to permit the construction of a proposed 25-unit, 6-story apartment building, notwithstanding the following. 1, that the garbage storage area be permitted in the front yard, whereas garbage storage areas are only permitted in the interior side or rear yard. 2, that 1 parking space be permitted per unit, whereas 1.25 parking spaces are required per unit. 3, that the proposed bicycle parking spaces be permitted within a required landscape buffer, whereas no bicycle parking space be permitted within a required landscape buffer. 4, that a front yard landscape buffer of 1 meter be provided, whereas a landscape buffer of 3 meters is required for a parking area abutting a public road. 5, that a side yard landscape buffer of 2.1 meters be provided, whereas a landscape buffer of 3 meters is required for a parking area abutting a residential zone. That a rear yard landscape buffer of 0 meters be provided, whereas a landscape buffer of 3 meters is required for a parking area abutting a residential zone. That a maximum lot coverage of 47% be permitted, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 40% is permitted in the R4 zone. And lastly, that a landscaped area of 16.5% be permitted, whereas a minimum landscaped area of 25% is required. Planning staff has reviewed the reference application and offered the following comments. Notice was circulated to the public on October 29, 2021, and as of today, the following has been received. The following comments will be summarized. However, the committee and the applicant have received the comments in full. Full versions can be found in the staff report or they can be made available upon request. From Patricia Kemp at 292 Catherine Street, the landscape of the current neighborhood does not support a building that is significantly taller. The request to reduce the percentage of landscaping required from 25% to 16.5% is unacceptable, as there will be lots of concrete and not much greenery. It would seem that the proposed building will be very close to the neighboring building, and as a result, it will be very crowded. Parking is already at a premium in this area, and 25 more residents in this area will compound that problem. The garbage at the front of the building will affect the neighborhood with will negatively affect the neighborhood with potential litter and unpleasant odors. From Greg and Susan Switek, they wanted to express their approval of the proposed apartment. The location is ideal because of its close proximity to all services and amenities in the downtown core. And also the building has an elevator which would be advantageous for seniors and handicapped individuals. From William Clow, wanted to express his opposition to the proposal. The parking in the area is already restricted. A building of this size would block the natural sunlight from the tenants on the south side of 292 Catherine Street, and it would also affect the solar panels that are on the roof of that building. And the next issue being the garbage. A 25-unit building would produce a large amount of waste that would be in view for everybody in the area. And lastly, from Tim Catchpole, the proposal will not fit visually with all that is around it. The 6-story proposed building, no matter its design, will be a grotesquely out-of-place structure. The request to minimize parking spaces with the proposed 25-unit building will most surely force several of the future tenants of that building to find extra parking somewhere on the street as well. It will cripple the solar panel operation that is on the roof of 292 Catherine Street. He asked that if it is approved, the size be reduced and kept within unchanged zoning requirements. From agency comments, notice was circulated to the required agencies on October 29th, 2021, and as of today, nothing has been received. Given the information in the planning staff report, planning staff recommend that application A30-21-PC be granted for the following reasons. 1, it is minor in nature as the requested variances are considered reasonable and measured requests. 2, it is appropriate for the development of the site as the proposed development is a permitted use and located in a suitable location on the site. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as apartment buildings are permitted in the R4 zone and the proposal meets the majority of the requirements of the bylaw. And 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan as apartment buildings are permitted in the urban residential designation. Subject to the following conditions. 1, that the garbage containing system located in the front yard must be a certified MOLEX system as identified in the submitted plan justification report and reflected in the concurrent site plan control application. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. Can you bring in the applicant, please? Good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, I hear you fine.
Very good. Just before you get started, I'm assuming you wish to continue with the application this evening. You don't withdraw or defer.
Yes, we are going to continue.
Very good. If there's anything further you'd like to add at this time, feel free.
Yes, so I prepared a presentation. Host disabled participant screen sharing.
You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, perfect. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacob Dickey, and I'm here today with my colleague, Terrence Glover. We're urban planners from Urban and Mind Planning Consultants, and we're acting as the agent for the owner of 290 Catherine Street. We put together a presentation for our minor variance application proposal that will facilitate the development of a 6-story, 25 rental unit apartment building. In our presentation, we'll start off with the site context. We'll talk about the policies and zoning regulations affecting the property. Afterwards, we'll introduce the design concept and talk about the variances that are required to facilitate the proposal. And finally, we'll finish off with questions. Here we have an aerial view of the site and surrounding area. As you're already aware, the property is located on the edge of downtown Port Colborne, so it's within walking distance to all sorts of amenities, shopping, schools, community facilities, parks, etc. And it's within one of the most dense areas in the whole city. So it's a perfect and ideal location for residential intensification. And here we have a street view of the subject property. Currently, the lot is vacant. There are no buildings or structures on the site. And to some, for those who regularly walk up and down Catherine Street, it can be viewed as a bit of an eyesore. So we hope to rejuvenate the lot. Moving on to the policy context, starting at the provincial level, we have the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And one of the main objectives of the plan is to encourage infill development within the built-up area to help curb urban sprawl and prevent the future fragmentation of agricultural lands and the Greenbelt area. And given that our subject property is located within the built-up area, which is highlighted in purple, it's a perfect candidate for higher density development. On the regional scale, you have the Niagara Region Official Plan. And again, it's within the region's built up area. The Regional Official Plan contains a number of different policies that promote infill development, residential intensification within the built up area to promote the use of existing municipal infrastructure. On the local level, you have the City of Port Colborne Official Plan. The property is located within the yellow urban residential land use designation, which allows for apartment buildings. And it's right outside of the downtown commercial area, given that the official plan contains policies that promote development patterns that support the viability of the downtown area. It can be expected that the future residents within the proposed building will help to support local businesses within the area. Moving on to the zoning map, the property is located within the R4 zoning category. And the R4 zoning category is the only pure residential zone that allows for apartment buildings. Back to the aerial view of the site and surrounding area. all the lands that are highlighted in yellow fall within that R4 zoning category, which does allow for apartment buildings. And as you can see, there's already an existing apartment building cluster in this area. So it only makes sense to develop the site with such, because it would help to build off of existing synergies and take advantage of existing municipal infrastructure. Moving on to development concept, here we have the site plan drawing. The lot itself maintains a lot area of just over 1,000 square meters. The building is delineated by the dashed black line that forms a rectangular shape in the middle of the property. And the building will partially overhang above the ground floor parking spaces in the side yards and above the driving aisle. There will also be bicycle parking located at the entrance of the building. And we have opted for private waste collection using the Moloch waste collection system. And this is what they look like. So a few benefits. They're a lot more aesthetically pleasing when compared to traditional garbage and recycling bins. They're contained and they don't smell. The garbage is compacted within the containers, so you can fit a lot more. They go partially underground. They're a lot more sustainable because you need fewer pickups. The trucks are a lot smaller compared to traditional garbage pickup trucks. Even when it comes to picking up or emptying the waste, it's a lot quieter. So there's definitely a lot of benefits to having these Moloch waste containers. And this is what the building will look like. So on one side of the building, you have your balconies. This is the side abutting the rail lands. And abutting the neighboring property to the north, there will not be any balconies. In terms of the zoning regulations affecting the site, the proposed development meets the lot frontage, setbacks, building height, and unit size requirements of the R4 zone. With respect to lot coverage, we're proposing 47%, which is a minor deviation from the required 40%. However, because the building will partially overhang above some of the parking spaces and maneuvering space, we feel like there is an optimal amount of space on the site to allow for a functional development. And the planning staff indicate this in their report as well. In terms of landscaping, we'll need variances to reduce the amount of landscaping and the size of the buffers abutting the public road, so Catherine Street, and the abutting residential properties to the north and west of the subject property. And we feel like this will be mitigated because we'll have fencing surrounding the perimeter of the site. The frontage of the property will contain bicycle parking and Molochs, new plantings, which will all enhance the streetscape. In addition, the building is the lot is situated directly across the street from an existing park. And some of the units will have their own balconies. We'll also need a variant to reduce the required amount of parking spaces. And we feel like this can be justified because the property is located just outside of the downtown area. So we feel like the future residents will be less dependent on vehicles, at least when compared to people living on the outskirts of the city. And in addition, the units will also be a lot smaller compared to your typical apartment building. So we can expect that there will be less occupants per dwelling. And then we also feel like the building will be a popular option for seniors who may not own a vehicle. And then finally, we'll also need variances to allow for bicycle parking and garbage storage within the landscaped area along the frontage of the site. And this will blend in well with the landscaping. Moving on. So to wrap things up, overall, we need a total of 8 variances. Based on our investigation of the site, the community context, zoning bylaw, and planning policies, we feel that each variance individually and collectively meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. In addition, the building will provide for a number of benefits to the city, and this includes an increase in rental units, an increase in revenue for local businesses, an increase in tax dollars, and an enhanced visual appearance along the Catherine Street streetscape. And that's it for our presentation. Now I'll take it back to the committee.
Thank you. Do any committee members have any questions for the applicant at this point?
Actually, I do.
Angie?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was really quite good. I do have one question about the types of units you're putting in. Will there be any accessibility units built? There will be? I see you're nodding your head.
Sorry, just I have it as part of every new development. There has to be some ratio of accessible units, and because it's likely seniors would be living in this building, the elevator will be there, and there'll be units designed for such.
Very good. That's good to know, because I have had that question asked by many seniors. And are there any, are these more or less affordable units, or like on the scale of affordability, what are you looking at?
So given the smaller size of the units, we can expect that they will be more affordable compared to other apartment buildings. In terms of size, we're looking at about between 58.3 to 81.6 square meters. So we don't have a set price for them yet, but given that they're smaller rental units, we can expect that they will be more affordable compared to your standard apartment dwelling.
And just to give you an imperial figure there, I know some people, not everybody's with metric. It's about, on average, about 700 square feet per unit.
Okay, and that would be classed as a 1-bedroom unit, would it be?
Yeah, it would be 1 bedroom typically, but we're going to see if we can engineer it for 1 bedroom and a den, perhaps. Okay. It won't be 2 bedroom though.
All right, that's good to know. All right, that's very good. Thank you. That was all my questions.
Thank you. Gary, do you have any questions?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and I was pleased to see the balconies, given that they have the opportunity to face the rail track versus the adjoining apartment buildings. It's always an issue when you have a tall building and looking down into backyards. In this case, it may not be backyards, but it's other apartments. No, my questions were all covered in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for myself, the only question I have is regarding the garbage disposal or the garbage storage area. I noticed, based on your site plan that was submitted with the application, that they're basically right out at the front, kind of most easterly portion of the property. Is that just for access for emptying? Because I show that they're kind of in a greened area on the thing. I'm assuming that you'll need kind of a driveway access to get onto them to lift out via the truck that we'll use to empty them. I'm just wondering, can they be tucked in closer to the building so that way they're not out at the street? Number one. Number two, I will also assume that these will be locked, so only the tenants can put their refuge into these containers.
Yes. So the Molochs can be accessed from the street. The trucks have like an arm that can reach out to the Molochs, so that we don't have to provide that turning radius to come into the back of the site. It also works well with our landscape scheme that we proposed as well.
Just to provide a bit more feedback into that as well. The way the Moloch works is the arm comes out, grabs them, and it's like lifting a garbage can bag out, and then they empty it into their truck, and then they put the bag back into the Moloch container to act as a garbage bag kind of. So it's all done by a boom on a truck, and the truck doesn't have to be right in there, but it does have to be close enough to the street so that it can be reached. And these are the systems that the region is currently looking at providing for private pickup, because it's much more clean looking and amenable from a functional point of view compared to the old garbage enclosures and the canisters they used to use.
Okay. And I'm assuming they're suitably sized that they would only need to be emptied once a week, every couple of weeks.
I'm not sure how frequent they would be emptied, but it actually goes partially underground, and the garbage gets compacted when it's in the container. So it may even be less frequent than once every week.
Okay, and they also accommodate composting as well as green bin, gray bin, as well as just regular garbage.
Yes.
Okay. Because I think probably the worst one's going to be the green bin, because it'll have the most organics in it that'll probably cause the most issues.
Well, the Molochs are actually sealed, so they don't really have the same type of odors that you would get with a typical compost bin. And that's one of the reasons why people like them so much.
Okay. I think that's all that I have. You touched on the other point. I know some of the comments of some of the people that responded had to do with the height. We're going to turn to the two delegations that have wished to speak to these, and I would ask that I know the question was, this is too tall for this situation. It's going to overshadow the neighboring apartments. I just want to remind everyone that the application here is not to go higher than what's required, so that is not a consideration for us. It's simply the footprint, really, when it comes down to it, on the ground of locations and setbacks and parking availability that is under discussion tonight. So with that, if there's no other questions, the committee members, if we can bring in the first delegate that's requested to speak to this, that would be great.
Your screen, raise hand.
You just click on it.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, can I be heard or?
There we go. We can hear you and we can see you now. So the floor is yours. Just before you get started, if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Henry Vandersloos. I'm a resident of Ridgeway. but I own the property along with several partners. That is at the backside of this property. So that would be 269 Elm Street. That was the apartment building that was shown to the west in the proposal or in the presentation that was done by Mr. Dickey. I also was the owner of 292, but that is currently owned by Carolyn Vandersloot, and I believe the second delegation that's coming along is going to be Jonathan Vandersloot, which is my son, who is responsible for running both of those properties. So obviously we have an interest. We'd like to address some of the concerns that we have. One of the things that I'd just like to point out, and whether it makes a difference or not, is the fact that I would think that normally in going through this process, the owners of adjacent property would be notified. I was not notified. I saw that something was going on the site and was interested, certainly, understood that probably a building was going to go up there. But it wasn't until someone brought it to my son's attention, I believe, that there was a posting of a building and a meeting, which was last week, that we got to find out that something was going on. I saw the picture that my son sent me, and I contacted the city of Port Colborne, I guess Mr. Chris Room, and he indicated if I would like to get notification, and I said certainly. And I received that letter, which showed the sketch that Mr. Dickey showed us as of Monday in the mail, I believe. And then I spoke to him yesterday and was given the documentation, or the way to access the documentation regarding this proposal. That's an 82 document, and based on my other work, I didn't have a chance to go through it. So I apologize if I don't have everything lined up here, but just from the basic things that I do know, we have some concerns which have been reflected in a couple of letters that have been received by tenants of the one tenant of the building, and I'm not sure who the two other gentlemen were, but today I spoke to one of the tenants in our building behind, meaning 269 Elm Street, and they were equally concerned for a number of reasons. And I think we will cover all of those reasons in this presentation. One, it was indicated in some of the report that I read that this is a minor variance. I can't imagine that if this is a minor variance, I wouldn't want to see what a major variance looked like. But I want to also emphasize that I think it's a great looking plan. I think that the city of Port Colborne does need to have more housing, and that this is a good site for housing. And therefore it could be a great project, but it is much too large for that site. I'd also like to point out that the city of Port Colborne was not pushing to have any of this development going on, and that lot was empty for years and years. And in fact, some of the tenants in both 292 Catherine and in 269 Elm Park were using it as overflow parking. So I was the individual that did start the process. I contacted Mr. Dan Acolina and back in February of 2020, and I said, what's the status on this land? What do we do? And he, apprised me of what was necessary. We made the application. It had to go through, I guess, town council or through the different departments to see if this would be excess land, if any department had need for this land. And of course, we know the result. It was offered to me at that point of time, however, it was July 7th, and COVID had just started, and the impacts of that and the difficulty in communicating with different departments in the city, it just seemed like, as this would be a first time development for me, and COVID, who knew how long that would, be hanging on, and here we are. It's hung on for quite a while. So I passed on it, and someone else took the opportunity. Good for them. Now, when I looked at it, I thought this is about the same size of lot as what we have at 292, and a building maybe modernized and looking a little, let's say, closer to 2020 than 1970s would be a good fit. But it was proposed, or in my imagination or in my planning, it would be between a 10 and 15 unit building. That would not impact the building to the north, which in the presentation by Mr. Dickey was shown, but it didn't show, even though it's been there for 6 years. So this is not a recent photo of the building. That building has solar panels on it. This building would virtually completely block that, but I will let the next delegation talk about that and address that. However, from my point of view, being a building owner in this area, I believe that parking is definitely going to be an issue. And what we have found, owning not those two properties, but also a 5-story building at 176 Ash Street, that over the past 20 years, 25 years actually, parking requirements have gone up, not down. Mr. Dickey indicated that this is close to town, people can walk. You're right, they can walk to town and do some of their shopping, but guess what? This is not Toronto. People that are working have to get to work. Very few jobs are in downtown Port Colborne. And therefore, people are going to need vehicles. I think there will be very little of these apartments that are actually occupied by single individuals. It'll probably be mostly couples. And one of the largest growing demographics in Toronto and the GTA is not necessarily couples, but what do they term it? It's roommates. Young people can't afford housing. They get together, they both have jobs, and they both have cars. So as we're finding in our properties, we need more parking than what we ever had. We recently redid parking lots in both 176 Ash and 269 Elm with the purpose of trying to increase parking and maximizing that. So it was said that these apartments are small apartments. Actually, I think they're some of the largest apartments that you will find in Port Colborne. 900 square feet is approximately what 5 of these units will be. That's on the north side of the building. These are all 81 point some square meters, which is pretty much 900 square feet. At Princess Bay, which has some of the larger apartments in this town, 3 bedrooms are under 900 square feet. A large 1-bedroom is about 500 square feet. So a good size 2-bedroom is 700 square feet. This is definitely, in my estimation, unless we know differently from the owners or from Mr. Dickey, going to be 3-bedroom. The other apartment, let's see, it looks like 62. So those are 700 square foot apartments. These are not 1-bedroom apartments. So you will likely get either families or couples, some seniors certainly. But even seniors, we're finding husband and wife have each a vehicle to get to different functions. One is doing part-time work, another's doing volunteer work. There is no way one parking spot is going to be what is required here. This is not Toronto. I understand that the firm that Mr. Dickey and Mr. Glover is from Toronto. I understand in Toronto, you can get in the subway and you can get to every manner of places, either by subway or just in the underground tunnels. You've got your, tens of thousands of people are working downtown. The cost of having a vehicle in Toronto is prohibitive. So young people there, old people, everybody is by and large getting by without as many vehicles. That's not the case in Port Colborne.
Can-
People are going
can-
to
can
well
I-
every day.
Can I
Right.
interject there real quick?
Absolutely.
You've had the opportunity to speak for 10 minutes already. I will let you continue for a little bit. I
Okay.
appreciate your concern about the parking. And like I say, as far as the elevation and everything else, that's not a consideration for this evening. So if there's anything further that you can
Right.
get to the 8 points that we're discussing, I'd appreciate it.
Okay,
Otherwise,
well, you did
I'll give you a little
point
bit more time, but I'll let you continue for a few more minutes.
Okay. Okay. Well, you said that the height wasn't a consideration. I'll just point out that in the last issue of the leader, it was indicated
Sir,
that
listen. I'm not going to talk about the height because that is not a consideration that we're hearing tonight. It's within the boundaries. He's not asking for a variance on the height. So please stick to the elements that are before us this evening. Thank you.
Well, I guess then I'm representing what is there, and the developer is considering what he wants to put there. Of course, he wants to maximize profit, but it's at the expense of the street, and that's, you don't have the parking, you're blocking the views and the light and whatever of some of the other buildings. This could be a wonderful project. Why isn't it designed to meet the city bylaws, unless those bylaws are not representing what the city actually wants? If the city says this is the bylaw, I can see a variation. We can put in the Moloch containers possibly, and even those go into the landscape area, which is already just one narrow strip. This is going to look like a sausage stuffed, onto a small piece of property that's not appropriate for it.
Okay, I'm going to stop. Listen. Okay, I'm going to stop you there because you're just going on about the aesthetics of the building and everything else, and not talking about the issues.
Excuse me. I do have some information on the Moloch system that it may not be 100% appropriate.
Okay, I've asked you to go to the items that are on the agenda for us this evening.
Okay.
Please stick to those.
Moloch
Otherwise,
system.
I'm gonna stop you there. So please be direct to the
Okay.
items that are in relation to this application.
Sure. The garbage in the front, that's the Moloch system. One, there's limited contractors that have the vehicles that do that, but they are there. Okay. It's like a crane which lifts this unit out of the ground.
That's all been explained.
Soft-like unit. No,
So
it hasn't.
what-
It's a soft-like unit.
Okay, sir.
These
So
units
listen.
have where
I'm
they
gonna
meet.
stop. I'm gonna stop you right there, because the type of system again is not part and germane to the issue that we had. The location, I agree, yes,
Okay,
and that's been addressed.
it is
So whether
germane.
it's this or some other system, that's fine. I don't want to talk about the specifics of the actual system.
Okay.
So
What is wrong with putting the location where every other building in Port Colborne has it, which is according to the bylaws and is at the back of the property? Okay.
that's a
where
legitimate
it's-
question, and it's already been explained by the applicant, I believe.
No,
He
it
can
hasn't
further
been.
elaborate.
It's
Sir, listen, I don't want to get into an argument with you.
Right.
You've
Well, may I
expressed your
point
concern.
out, there is only one reason that it has to be located there, and that's because the property is not sized for the job that it's supposed to do. You can put it at the back, but not if the building covers the area that it covers.
And that's the reason why we're here this evening, is for us to discuss and
Pardon me?
decide upon that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you there.
I said that is the purpose of
Hello?
having this meeting this evening, is to review
Right.
those things and
Okay.
discuss it, and we will decide upon that as a committee.
Okay.
So is there
let me
anything
point-
further you'd like to add?
Yes. The bicycles, for instance, okay? They're not where I guess they're supposed to be, or they're in the landscaping. Let me point out that having bicycles located there isn't a resident that will put them there because they'll be stolen, okay? There's plenty of experience with this kind of a thing, that nobody's gonna put the bikes out on the street. These will go up in the elevator and sit on the balconies. Okay, that might be fine. Maybe it's not fine, but really it should be in an enclosed area that's under the building. It's now shown in the landscaping. It doesn't enhance the landscaping. It even reduces the landscaping further, and it's just not going to work. I guess my purpose is to say that my thinking is that we as a community should be looking at putting in housing, higher density, yes,
Okay,
but putting it
okay,
in
sir.
an appropriate
Okay.
way.
That's it. I'm going to stop you there because I don't want to get into discussing. We're not here to discuss what the city wants and what council wants and everything else. We're here to discuss this particular application. He's asked for some variances. You've expressed your opinion and your concerns. We will take those under consideration, and the applicant will have an opportunity to comment on them if he wishes. But as it stands right now, I'm going to stop you there, and I'm going to ask for the next delegation, please. I've given you ample time to present your case.
Mr. Chair, if I may just correct one point that was made.
Yes.
We are not located in Toronto. We're located in Burlington, and I used to be the director of planning at the town of Pelham. I'm very familiar with Niagara and Port Colborne. I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you. So David, if you can bring.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Mr. Chair. I just wanted to respond to some of the comments here with respect to the location of the bicycle parking and the Molochs. One thing with having bicycle parking located at the entrance of the building is that it's very convenient for residents to access it. And according to crime prevention principles, believe it or not, it's actually safer to have your bike located in a visible location that can be seen for people walking up and down the street, because crime most often happens in areas that are out of sight from the public. So believe it or not, your bicycle is actually a lot safer in a location where people are coming in and out of the building and where it's visible. People are less likely to steal the bike when it's in a visible location. And then with the Molochs containers, it's also convenient to have the waste storage close to the building entrance. And it also allows for easy pickup for the trucks. So hopefully I answered your questions.
Thank you. So with that, David or Chris, can you bring in the next delegation, please?
Hello.
Good evening. How are you?
Oh,
and just before you get started, again, just your name and address for the record, and again, I'll just remind you, please keep your comments directly to the variances that are in front of us, and if you can, try to limit your comments to 10 minutes. We have a little bit of leeway, but that would be appreciated. Thank you.
It should be doable.
Floor's yours.
No problem. So I'm Jonathan Vandersloot. I'm representing Carolyn Vandersloot. I believe that's why it says Carolyn at the top of the screen or on my image there. But she's the owner of 292 Catherine Street, which is the 2.5-story apartment building next to the proposed lot. On a full disclosure, I'm also a co-owner of the property at the back there at 269 Elm Street. But I'm only going to be speaking on behalf of 292 Catherine Street. Firstly, I'd just like to voice my objection in regards to the posted notice at the vacant lot. On the notice, it was says that the proposed 6-story building is for 292 Catherine Street, which is wrong and misleading. So just to anyone that is reading that notice, it's incorrect. The other item being basically that I only received the notice of public hearing letter last week. And contrary, I guess, to the secretary's statement earlier on in the Zoom meeting, as far as I'm aware, none of my tenants have received a similar letter in the mail. So I think that some notification would have been provided to each and every resident in the adjacent properties to the proposal. So essentially, for the public notice to only be posted on a 2x2 piece of cardboard with the wrong street address is less than what would have been expected. That's all I'm saying on that, basically. So in regards to the variances, I have a couple of objections. Firstly, basically 8 minor variances might be minor individually, however, collectively, they do become, I think, major. So 292 Catherine Street, I guess, as some tenants have mentioned earlier in their letters when they wrote in, has solar panels located on the south side of the building, which generates revenue for our property. So by having a 6-story property or building dwarfing 292 Catherine Street and placing it in shade for a considerable portion of the day has a direct impact on the property financially. So our estimate of lost revenue is approximately 44%. So my first question would be like, who compensates me for that, or what would happen in this scenario? Then in regards to variance 7, which is requesting a footprint of 47% be allowed, that's a 17.5% gain in size over the existing bylaw. So that doesn't seem minor to me. That seems rather considerable. This again has a negative effect on our solar panel revenue. Also, any south-facing windows of our tenants' apartments will receive less sun and privacy. In regards to variances 4, 5, and 6, they're asking for reductions of, if you do the math, it's 66.67%, 30%, and 100% respectively. These again don't seem so minor once you put them in percentage forms. Variance number 2, prior to the sale of this lot, this is going into the parking. This property is basically used as overflow parking for vehicles that didn't have anywhere to park in the surrounding neighborhood. When 292 Catherine Street was first constructed, many apartment residents didn't have vehicles, but the dynamic of apartment tenancies now is that almost every tenant has 1, if not 2 vehicles. So parking spots are at a premium on these neighboring properties. Anyone who was previously parking on this empty lot now have to park on the surrounding streets. For a new apartment complex to be even considering a reduced number of parking spaces and ask for variances of 1 per unit, down from 1.25, which again is a 20% reduction in available parking spots, is rather short-sighted, I would say, on the city's behalf. This will negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood. Presently, overflow from existing apartment buildings and even homeowners who don't have sufficient driveway space park on the streets. Also, if there's restricted parking during the winter months, this will only create further congestion, parking congestion. This request is not a minor variance, but rather a major one. All tenants and homeowners wish to park as close to their homes as possible, and by allowing new buildings to not meet current bylaws is unacceptable and will mean more congested streets with residents and guests struggling to find parking. Also, I guess in regards to the fact that the building's downtown, as alluded before, that driving isn't so much a concern, I guess, for tenants that would live downtown. I do manage several properties in the area, 2 of which are mainly seniors buildings, and many of those tenants have 2 vehicles. So regardless of being downtown, people still rely on their vehicles for travel, work, vacation, shopping, visiting family and friends. So I believe that parking is a major consideration. In summary, these proposed variances are not minor, they are major and should be referred to town council and go through the zoning bylaw process. And that's it.
Thank you. Let me see if I can address a couple of these or ask some questions with regards to the notice period. David or Chris, if you can clarify for us, notices were sent to the registered property owners of the adjacent properties, correct?
Yes. I did get one last week. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'll come back to you.
Yep.
So Chris or David, is that
yes,
correct?
That is correct.
Okay. As far as the notice on the sign, although I drove by, I did see the notice. I guess I didn't drive close enough to actually read it. Does it actually have the wrong address on the sign?
There is there's a small blurb on the bottom of the sign. There should be an explanatory relief, much like the notice of hearing. I do believe it does say 292 Catherine. When the application was submitted, they had submitted it with that address, and I guess there was just a little bit of confusion there. I do think that the majority of the sign is correct, though. It does say vacant lot, or it should say west side of Catherine Street, but there is a small section there that does say 292.
Okay, and also to the point of tenants being notified. It's never been the practice of notifying tenants of buildings. It's simply the property owner, the registered property owner of the adjacent properties, and I believe it's just the immediate adjacent property owners. So that's why your tenants wouldn't have been noticed, thus the purpose of the sign. So if you're the registered property owner and you didn't receive a notice, I guess we can look into that to see when it was sent. You've seen in the staff report when it was mailed out. So I don't know if there was any issues there or not, or the wrong address was registered for the adjacent property owners, but I can't comment to that, but I will clarify that it should have been mailed to the registered adjacent property owners. Now, with that being said, there was a couple points. I won't address all of them. I will go to the point of this minor, what is deemed to be minor. From a committee's perspective, minor is in the eye of the beholder. You did comment that going from one value to nothing, how can that be minor? So that's where we have to take all of this in totality, and it's up to us to decide what is considered to be minor. So there is no definitive calculation, whether it's 5% is minor or 100% is minor. It's really for us to decide in minor. So I will address those. I don't know if the applicant wishes to address some of these other issues. But before I go to the applicant, I will go back to you. You do have a little bit more time. You said there was a couple more points you wanted to bring up to the delegation.
Myself?
Yes.
Oh, no, sorry. I'm basically done. Just
Okay.
Before, when you're asking, I guess, the chambers or the secretary, I was answering thinking you're talking to me, but that's
Okay.
just a mistake.
All right. Very good. Thank you. So to the applicant, I'll give you an opportunity if you wanted to reply to any of the comments that were brought up by this by Mr. Van der Sluis.
If I may, Mr. Chair, we don't have any direct comments. I think in our presentation, it's been addressed in our justification report and also staff's comments in terms of how they responded to a number of those questions that were brought up. But I am aware that one of the owners would like to say something if it's now or later. Mr. Chris Lamb is online and he would like to say something in regards to some of the topics that have been brought up. I'll let you decide when that would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, does any of the committee members have any questions for the applicant with regards to the points that were brought up? Not seeing any. I don't believe we have any other registered delegations that wish to speak to this application. So we can bring in Chris or David. I'm not sure who's controlling the waiting room. I'm assuming they have the password to get into the meeting. So they should be in the waiting room. If we can bring the owner into the meeting, if that's that'll work.
I don't know if he doesn't have the password. I'll send him the password now by text. I'm not sure if he does or does not. So that may be a slowdown here. Chris, if you're watching, I'm going to send you the password now by text message. I mean, so you must have the password because you got in. So it's a matter of the.
Yeah, he might be sitting in the waiting room.
Okay.
He was there, but now he's not there anymore.
Technology being grand.
Well, I'll take this interlude if I could to just thank the committee for allowing us to speak and giving us the opportunity. Again, I think the staff have covered most of the concerns that have been raised, and a lot of the issues, site plan, garbage location, parking location, landscaping will be done at site plan approval process. We do have to go through site plan on this process. So the city will be looking at that and scrutinizing what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. It's a concept we're providing today so that we can ask for the variances in hand.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure where the client is or the owner is, so I guess we can just continue.
Okay. So Gary or Angie, do you have any questions? Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You had asked one of the ones that I had about tenants in the neighboring building. Through you to our planner and secretary treasurer, was my understanding that the lot that the city had sold that this development is now going on was a city parking lot and not, and given the commercial area, given the museum, given the park, but not an overflow parking for any particular neighborhood buildings. Do you know anything about that? It used to have a sign on it that said city parking lot, but I'd never known it to be intended for the neighborhood per se.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can touch on that. It may have been used as overflow parking in the past. However, there was no easements or anything registered on title that suggests that it's for any particular building or any property adjacent to it or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The other question was with respect to parking. This came up, and I'm not sure whether it was at Committee of Adjustment before or with someone else's planning applications at the city. But were we not at 1.50 at one time, and parking requirements have been reduced to 1.25? And is it not also the region and other municipalities that are actually going in that direction? It's not that parking is being requested on an increased basis. It's that actually applicants and city bylaws in the region has been moving in a receding direction. Can you comment on that, Mr. Planner?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct. It has been noticed across the region that parking provisions have been actually getting lower as a whole to make way for more density, which is in line with provincial policy, and to try to promote more residential units.
Thank you. And I guess finally, in looking at applications, whether it's from a zoning point of view or Committee of Adjustment, I'm sure the issue of homes, commercial buildings, industrial that have solar panels, is that a legal air rights issue? Or is it just that, so for example, if the owner of 292 could actually remove his building and put up, if these are for a 6-story building, which may encumber another neighbor's solar panels. What I'm trying to get at is, are those ever even considerations, and particularly in this case, where both properties are R4?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not familiar with the legal ins and outs of air rights above a building or sunlight. However, I would note that had a height variance been requested, it is in staff's prerogative to request a shadow study if that is so required. We have done so in the past for taller buildings that have gone through the committee process as well. But because this building is built within or proposed within the heights of the zoning bylaw, staff didn't request any shadow studies or anything along with the application.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Angie, did you have any questions?
No, I did not. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if we were able to get the owner back online or not, but I will turn it over to the applicants if there's anything further you'd like to add at this time.
I'd just like to clarify the owner. I spoke with the owner. He had some connectivity problems and he does not need to speak anymore. Thank you for allowing him. Jacob, I'll let you conclude.
Yep, that's everything. We've provided you our presentation. We have comments from the staff. So that's everything that we wanted to touch on tonight.
All right, very good. If no one else has any other questions or comments, do either of you have a recommendation or wish further discussion? Gary?
Yes, I thought there were the neighbors not coming in?
Those were the only two delegations that registered prior to the meeting. So
Okay. Okay.
I'm
thank
going to
you.
assume there's no one else.
Sure. Thank you. Yes, I'd like to put forward a recommendation. With respect to application A30-21 PC, in the matter of the lands legally known as part of Part Lot 8, or Part Lot 6, I beg your pardon, on Plan 987, 988, and 989, on the west side of Catherine Street. The minor variance application A30-21 PC be granted subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report dated November 5th, 2021, subject to the following conditions: that the garbage containing system located in the front yard must be a certified MOLEC system as identified in the submitted planning justification report and reflected in the concurrent site plan control application.
Thank you. Seconder to that, sorry, Angie. Thank you. Questions or comments? Sorry, if I might, there was one thing I did want to ask that I kind of missed. With regards to the parking going underground, is the height of that parking kind of normal height? Is it kind of limited in the sense that like a typical underground parking facility where it's like only like 6.5 feet or 7 feet, or is it like a full 8 foot or 9 foot ceiling height right through? And I guess where I'm going is with regards to accessing the rear of the property via one of these trucks. I don't know how big these garbage trucks are for that garbage system. Would it be possible to drive one of those trucks right through the parking into the rear of the facility as it stands right now?
If I may, Mr. Chair, it would not be possible. In order to get the headroom required for a truck of that size, which is essentially tractor trailer type size, a big garbage truck with a crane on top of it, as well as if there was a fire that broke out in one of these or something, fire trucks in the back. I mean, it's just not practical to raise the building that high off the first story pedestal. Right. It would be an unusual looking building, put it that way.
Okay, very good, thank you. So with that being said, if no one else has any other questions or comments, I'll look for all those in favor. And that would be unanimous. There's no opposed. Thank you. There is a 20-day waiting period, as I'm sure you're aware, for this for appeals. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you. I'll just wait for Eric to pop back into the meeting for the last couple little things on our agenda, assuming he's still there. There he is. Thanks for patiently hanging in there, Eric. So the next is any other business.
Actually, I do have an item, Dan. We recently received, all members of the Committee of Adjustment recently received an email from a resident who had appeared before us in the past and now has some pretty strong concerns about the decisions that we made and how we went about making them. I would just like to know if that email was addressed by this committee to him, or because I know the CAO did address his email, but I wondered if this committee did.
I to be quite frank, I don't know what email you're actually even referring to.
Robert Shield.
If it was sent, I'm assuming it was sent to councillors as opposed to the committee, because I did not receive it to my knowledge.
Okay, well, it's probably in your inbox then, because your name was on it. All the Committee of Adjustment members were sent the email. So,
what? Sorry, how long ago was it sent?
This just happened in the last 2 weeks. There's been a lot of flurry around it. There's a council portion as well. I just wondered if it was addressed from the Committee of Adjustment, because, you know, if I remember correctly, that the decision that we made that night did not go, was not taken farther along and appealed in any way. So I found it kind of odd that he would now send us this email, but just I wondered if the committee had addressed it. That's all. But if you're not, if you're not aware of it, then obviously we didn't.
David or Chris, can you elaborate? If it was addressed, if I was copied on it, I do not recall seeing it. I know there was a little bit of a time when we were transitioning to the Outlook email versus what it was before. It might have been in that period, but I thought I got everything that was sent. It just piled up after a while. But so if it was sent, can someone please resend it to me, whoever has it? But as far as the response goes, it did not come from me, as far as I know, to my knowledge. I know I'm getting up there in years, but I don't recall sending anything like that. But so if it is something that I'm assuming the CAO would have addressed it directly. Gary, you had your hand up.
If I could jump in quick, the CAO
Sure.
has responded to the individual, and if I recall correctly, the email that he had sent to you, Dan, was at your former employer. So obviously that wouldn't get to you, and I'm not sure exactly how he would have that email in the first place. But with that being said, that's likely why you didn't receive it. But I don't think the committee should be engaging at all. I don't think that's appropriate.
Yeah, I would agree with that, by the way. Just that's why I had wondered how it was handled.
Yeah. For my own benefit, not that I want to reply, but since it was addressed to me and my former employer has it, can someone please forward it to me? So if I do get confronted by somebody, at least I know what they're talking about.
Okay.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other business? Not seeing any. Gary?
No, I was actually just going to weigh in on what David had answered to Angie, that I don't know that if we're ever written to, do we apply as a committee? It actually would take the next meeting for us to discuss it. And I would think we would want our staff to discuss it. So I think indirectly, the CAO has responded for all the component city departments. And you'll remember building was involved in it, and I think bylaw, Scott, for a while. And so I think the one window approach is probably the right way. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Basically, once a decision is made by this committee, we're done with it. The only time something could come back to us is if there's a condition on a severance. The only thing we can consider is altering or waiving a condition of a severance within the time frame allotted to comply. But to my knowledge, that is the extent of NES involvement. Once a decision is made, it's done and it's off our plate going forward. So,
Okay.
Angie, you had something else?
Yeah, my concern is just that if we do have emails coming to us for any reason at all, that there would be someone who would be appointed to follow up on that, whether it be to pass it along to the CAO or whatever. But we have some procedure in place so that it doesn't go unaddressed. That's all.
Yes.
So if it go to David, or if it be bumped over to Scott, however it is, but I just feel that there should be somebody who will be the point person for that kind of thing.
Very good. So Gary?
I had just thought about something when you had mentioned about the perhaps redirect should come to you now. Dan, I don't know if the Committee of Adjustments Ontario, the association, had been changing some things at their end, and all of us got a email with respect to training and registering and all of that kind of stuff. And I didn't know if you had received it, because if you hadn't, then they may still have your old email address as well.
Yeah, and that particular one, I did get it.
Okay.
And my previous employer email address was not on any of the correspondence. My personal one was, but that one was not.
Great. Thanks.
I just sent it to you. So I sent it to your Cogeco address.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
So with that, there was a schedule of meetings for next year. I believe they all stay on the Wednesday. I don't know if there's any conflicts. I didn't go down each individual day, but It seems to have worked out pretty good for the end of this year, so I will believe we'll continue that same pattern. I do like the fact that there's one extra day in the preceding week for comments and communications and so on and so forth. So I think that works out well, assuming we're still going to get our reports on the Friday prior. So yeah, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll ask if someone can move the agenda for next year's meetings. Angie, seconder. Gary, any questions or comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor of that agenda? That'll be carried. So with that, if there's no other business, I'll look for a mover and a seconder of the minutes of our October 13th meeting. Gary, seconder. Eric, any questions or comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you. So with that, I will consider this meeting adjourned, and we will, I don't know if we have any applications for next month, but we'll see